broadcast public speaking tours.
Oh, wow.
And then I started teaching about 14 years ago, started teaching there, where I had gone to school. And one of my former students is there. In another course, an advanced course, she's doing a story.
Oh, your former student?
10 years ago.
Wow.
Course.
Oh, wow.
And then I started teaching about 14 years ago. And then for the last 5 years, I've been the public affairs officer at the public affairs. That was my former students. The last 5 years I've been before that.
I wasn't at a military practice and probably you were around 6 months ago, East Coast.
Same. Same.
No, I yeah, the first time I just recently, I didn't get.
Unlikable female. Same. Yep. Yep. Unlikable female. Yeah, that's been very hard. Turn this down a little bit. Yep. There we go. So it's not quite so. Okay. Hi everyone. This is Belle Pop Culture Covered, and we're here at Snug Books in Baltimore. And we are here talking about Unlikable female characters by Anna Bogutskaya. So, who is ready? All in for?
I'm close.
I was trying to get into an apartment.
So, and I'll put this over here. Sure. Well, let's talk about it.
Yeah.
So, what was your first impression of the book when you first started reading it?
I enjoyed it.
Okay.
I was looking forward to delving a little bit more into it. I love I love women's studies, period. And I really love the representation of women in pop culture because I think it's a mirror for society, reflecting society, and then also maybe hoping to change some of the societal elements. I loved how she categorized the different types of women, the train wreck, that's the one that kind of jumps out.
Yeah, that one also jumped out at me as well, and not just because of the movie.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just I enjoyed it. I apologize. I was a little bit mistaken about the nature of what we were doing today. So I was like, oh great, someone's gonna kind of talk about it. Cool. So I kind of started and I was like, oh, it's also a discussion. So this is like a book club. So I was like, oh crap. And I realized that on my way here. So I'm gonna treat it like my intro psych class, and I'm going to win.
Right back to the first thing.
What about you, Alan?
well, I got because of the pop culture thing, I got this understanding about that. But I did like, I knew it was. I wasn't sure if it was unlikable or unusual or whatever female characters. I said, okay, when I see a title like that, I usually like, oh, well, let me read that. I want to find out what you're talking about. But yet I hadn't had a chance to even
Crack it.
crack it or even buy it at this point, you know.
Well, there are several copies up at the counter.
Okay.
So if you want to buy. Pete, what about you?
It was, I don't know what I expected. It was just, I think I was looking for almost more of, like it being laid out for me, like this is what it is. This is what, you know, this is, I expect more of like just a rigid opinion or something that was like making more declarative statements. And when I felt like the further I got into the book, the more it's just like an exploration of
Mhm.
every aspect of these types of characters, and the different eras that they were represented in.
Yeah.
So that,
History.
Yes, we go from Mae West to Villanova from Killing Eve. Yeah,
we
yeah.
got into, she mentions Furiosa.
Furiosa, yeah.
It is Furiosa.
It's Furiosa,
Like
yeah.
so I was like, okay, well, this is current. It's
Yeah.
7th edition. So it is, consistently being updated. But it made me, you know what, it made me feel defensive.
Interesting.
Really?
It's a like it put every notion that I had in my head of like, we talk about all types of pop culture all the time. We
Yeah.
talk about male characters, female characters, representation, and diversity, inclusion, all of those things, and how they wrote, how they relate to the pop culture that we analyze and read and love. And I just at every turn had to like stop and think and examine everything that I thought. And it's funny because as I was reading the book, every couple days, I would, my wife and I would turn on TV, and there's every show, every movie, everything we're watching has a character that falls into any type of different trope, and the many different categories of unlikable female character are there. And I'm like, do I not like this character because of this? Do I not like this character because of that? Because I want to try to appreciate art as it's, I don't know, in a way that is, in a way that is with an open mind.
Yeah.
And with an understanding of like both, where the character comes from, the creator, how that character is being portrayed by an actor, and how that character is being reacted to, in the real world. And filtering all that was just like, it made me think a lot, and it made me think of like how even now, thinking that I've got a lot more figured out than I did when I was younger, we still have a lot to learn, particularly about female characters and their representation and how we.
Yeah, I think for me personally, I had to. It not defensive, but it made me go, huh? Is that why I don't like this character? Multiple times as I was reading the book. Anyone who follows our podcast knows that I am not a big fan of Wanda Maximoff from the Avengers films. Nor am I a fan of the character in the comic books. And I was like, interesting. I wonder if because of how we've been fed. Now, part of that is because personally, it is something that we've talked about on our podcast multiple times, going back to Legion, I think, where I do not care for female characters getting excused for doing something that a male character would be hung from the rafters for. That is a huge issue for me. And so I don't know if you all have seen Legion. Legion is based off of Marvel Comics, and it's about Charles Xavier's son, who has all the powers.
And so end of that Marvel universe.
Oh no, not at all. It's been 1963.
I can't even get trying to catch up.
Don't worry. I took a Marvel break for a year. The last thing I recently watched was the new X-Men 97 series because of nostalgia, but also because it's really good. So don't feel bad. I have not. I'm not. I checked out. It was too much information. It was too many things. It was so many things happening. There was too many releases back to back, and there was no breathing room, and it felt like constant catch up. And I just, at one point, I was like, I'm never going to be caught up. So one of the things, there's a character on that show, and one of the things that's discussed in the book she's pretty, she's thin, she's white, she's blonde. And she does something multiple times, actually, starting at teenagerhood. She's not spoiling anything, but she does something that's absolutely reprehensible. And everybody treats her like a victim. And I remember when you, Allie and I were talking about that show, and we were like, are we talking crazy about this? She like to just get through the consequences of her actions. If it had been literally, if it had been a male character or a woman of color who did the exact same thing, we would be like, burn her at the stake.
And then but that is a reflection of our past culture.
Right, right.
It's really been that way. Other types of things, but I'm caught by, I hadn't had a chance to really look at the book, and I'm looking at that. The women pop culture wants you to.
Yes.
And I go like, okay,
Yeah.
That was the central thing that made it so tricky for me the further I got into the book is, we've talked about Wanda Maximoff, we've talked about a character from Legion, we've talked about most recently like Admiral Holdo from The Last Jedi, of these characters that it almost feels like they're not, I don't want to go on that tangent, but it almost feels like they're propped up in a way.
Yeah.
And so in this book, it was curious though, because there was, she's done her research, and it's just character, all these examples. And where I was sort of looking, what I was looking for was like a definitive statement of like, this era was bad, or this type of character is, and I knew it was going to be more complex than that, but it did feel like I walked away. I still don't know whether I'm meant to look at female villains, not just like unlikable characters, but straight up villains, people who do reprehensible things. And if I'm meant to understand them better, and if that was the takeaway, that like, I don't know, it just seemed like at every turn I was trying to fight this feeling that she was defending the worst in these characters as being like, well, you need to accept it. When I'm like, I wouldn't accept this from any character though. Like, this character would be my villain, and I would hate them forever. While still, yeah. And so like, and so at every turn I'm like, wow, did I just play into this? I'm the worst. But there and it just it sparked all kinds of conversations, which I think is the best thing to do.
Yes.
They sat down with friends and they're like, I hate villains. Like I don't like Walter White. I don't think Walter White's somebody to aspire to, but and so I also don't feel this. Yeah. So, and I kept throughout, because there are several characters that are mentioned throughout the book. And at a certain point, I like paused while I was like listening to the part, and I was like, Cruella de Vil wanted to skin Bunny. I can't, be understanding.
Movie.
The movie.
And she talks about both of those contrasts.
Right.
Yes.
My youngest son, he's 30, he was like, well, the movie didn't follow the theme of the book, and because she wasn't into the dogs. And I'm like, why do you care? Why do you care? To me, the movie, the original movie.
Oh, you talking about the original? Yeah.
The cartoons were, it was neat because it was about the dogs and the villain, and could have been anybody. But I just loved Cruella. I mean, and it was just a fascinating movie, and I saw all the special parts about the sets, the wardrobes, and all that. And it's just like, of course, I love Emma Stone anyway.
Always.
So, but
When she's not playing an Asian woman. No, we're not forgetting. We're never gonna forget it. She did call herself out on it though. So. Oh, there's a movie that she was supposedly being a very real person who was Asian. And it's set in Hawaii. It was Christopher Columbus, what I'm going to say. And instead of casting an Asian American woman, they cast Emma Stone, and everyone was like, we know who she is. We can see her.
We've met this person.
We can Google her. She's a real human. Yeah,
She read it.
yeah, she did. She called herself out on it as well. But that's okay. So that's another thing that Anna Bogutskaya talks about is the casting and how these decisions are made before they even get to film of who to elevate and who not to. And so one of the things she touches on multiple times is how we have been conditioned to care about white women's sadness and white women anger. And yet, but white women are the only ones allowed on screen for the last eon to be angry, to be, because angry Black women, when we're angry, it's the angry Black woman.
Well, you're scary. What can I tell you?
Well, that's because you're like a little. I'm like 3 months apart. It's not the point. Yeah, but that's so
Right,
she's
yeah.
right. Like so, like it's only been recently with shows, with mostly the Shonda Rhimes shows, where we have seen Black and brown women and Asian be allowed to be angry. Exactly. We have seen them allowed to be ruthless and nasty and not apologize for them. But in the history of film, which has been around since the late 1800s, early 1900s, it's the 2020s.
Yeah.
And it's only in what the first Shonda Rhimes show, the
10
first
years
Grey's
ago,
Anatomy,
yeah.
and Grey's Anatomy was what, 10 years ago? 10, no, because it's been on forever. So like
Right.
16 years ago. So it's the first time that you really were allowed to do that. The way she touched on the Sapphire and Spicy Latina
Yeah.
shows. Ooh. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Sapphire trick.
No.
So Sapphire Smith is from Amos and Andrew, all the way back in the day. Erica started on the radio, and she was the wife of one of the characters, and she was loud, and she spoke her mind, and she always checked for everyone, no matter how in the old-fashioned word uppity they thought they were, which is a whole other conversation that we do not have time for. And the character became a trope. So then every Black woman who had nothing fell into that category. Every Black woman who exposes anger, one of the things she touched on was waiting to exhale. And that infamous scene. And as soon as I say it, everyone here knows the scene I'm talking about. And so when she sets fire to his face in the car, and how had that had been played if it had happened publicly, she would have been just deemed an angry Black. But the thought and the smartness of the choices was to have her do it happening behind closed doors. So that we as an audience were pulled into her pain, that she had given up the formative years of her life, where she could have started the business, where she could have done all of these things, that is literally the fire station from down the street from my house, which is around the corner. Which is that, and this is something that's universal to so many people, men and women. You do all of this work. The play I'm getting ready to direct is literally one of the characters. Her brother put his wife through law school, and then as soon as she got through law school, she dumps him for someone else. It's such universal. It's not so. Yeah, not
Okay.
We both know people who've gone through that. So yeah.
In the book, I talked about that scene. It's we know that scene, and it's a meme,
Yeah, but it's a meme without taking the context of the meme.
And that's exactly the thing in the book that I didn't think about. It's like, oh, that's a triumphant moment, or like a moment for Unlikable or Unlikable. We look and we're like, that's
Yeah.
And the two things that the book explores in depth that come out of that is we only seem to allow women to be angry when it is personally, like she's been personally betrayed, where male characters can be angry over just about anything. You know, they think of all the speeches.
She talked about network.
Yeah, she talked about that.
I'm angry.
And, you know, I'm mad as hell. I'm not going to take it anymore. You know, courtroom speeches, and everything Sam Jackson has done since Sam Jackson became and I hope
and Jack Nicholson.
And that the only reason, one of the few avenues that a woman's anger is allowed shown in this way, or is, you know, is someone's going to show it in that way, is if she's been personally betrayed.
Yes.
If it's, well, you know, we would all react this way, as opposed to any myriad other ways that, you know, male characters are able to react with anger. And then the other was what you said, that that having that moment, that sort of seeing it as a triumphant moment where she sets the, you know, car on fire, all his things on fire in the car and walks away, is a great moment, but it's not, it's a shortcut to an empowering sort of idea, when the reality is there was so much pain in that moment. And that's the takeaway we have is this sort of triumphant moment, instead of like, look at what this character has been through.
Yes, and now
it's
she's
not like it's not a triumph for her. It's trauma.
Yeah,
she's still in the middle of it, and constantly I feel like that's a theme that is referenced in the book over and over, is trauma. We're not allowed to see it except through the lens of like, this is a terrible thing that happened to a woman, and now she's allowed to be angry about it, allowed to
now she's allowed to be angry about it. That's the part, which one of the things she touches on is promising nothing. Have you either of you seen? It's very recent. That movie that was one of those movies that I watched, and I genuinely wasn't sure how I felt about it. And I couldn't figure out what it was until I read the book. And it was because we didn't get the catharsis of the main character killing him. Because if this was a different movie, she would have gotten her revenge. The premise of the movie is that the main character, Carey Mulligan's character, best friend, is raped. And she then dies by suicide. And Carey Mulligan is carrying that away. And she's just, it destroys her to the point she drops out of medical school. She drops, I think she left her fiance. She could not deal with it. And then the more she dug into it, and she watches how the university comes up. And it's not just the men of the university, it's women in the upper echelons who are like, well, we can't ruin a good boy's career in life because of the potential of what it is. And so that's not even a huge spoiler. I don't want to spoil everything. So we watch her journey through her processing her grief in the most psychotic way possible. And we're rooting for her. She's being crazy. It's fantastic. It's Emerald Fennell who played the younger version of, Emerald Fennell is a writer and actor and director. She played the younger version of Camilla on The Ground. And she's a really great director. She just directed Saltburn, I want to say. And I will double check. Put it in notes. But she's a very great writer and director, and a fantastic actress. And her work is not unproblematic and she's the first to acknowledge that she comes from a place of privilege. She is a daughter of an English lord, and she comes from all these privileges. And, you know, again, skinny, black, blonde, beautiful. And so, but she actively tries, and I appreciate that she does. She actively tries to not fall into it. Doesn't always hit, but you can tell that she's making the effort, which in all honesty, I appreciate that more than you know, because for a long time, no one was trying. No one was trying at all. So I realized I'd watched the movie, and it was one of those movies where I walked out of it and I was just quiet. And I didn't know And it's been years. And I didn't know why I did not like that movie. Or not that I didn't like it, that I loved it all the way up until the last 20 minutes.
Unsatisfying.
Yes, yes. And that's what it was, because we are expecting, because we have been conditioned that women are allowed to show their anger when they're in revenge or protecting a child or in revenge for a hurt that has been done to them. And so to see a female character not do the taken trope kind of threw me a little bit, because we have been conditioned that that's the only time we're allowed to be angry, right? In film and television, that's one of the reasons we root for, Buffy to go and beat the crap out of people, or Xena, or yeah, right? Or Xena, I know that's his favorite.
Just like me.
Or Villanova, or Atomic Woman, Charlize Theron's character. We root for that. Yeah, I love that movie. And we root for those characters to just, mow them down. And so when a character who, by society's standards, should be allowed to do that doesn't, we feel let down. But it's like, why isn't she allowed to not do that? Right. Because we've been conditioned that that's the only way we're allowed to show anger. And instead, she goes about a legal way of burning these people's lives down. And so, but we wanted her to kill. So I think she does a really good job. Again, repeatedly throughout the book, there are some things I didn't know, I knew a little bit about me. I mean, you can't not know, if you know anything about theater and film, you know who Midwest is. So not a lot, right? But I had no idea that she was arrested multiple times for the plays she wrote. That she negotiated. She did one film as a background character, and it was such a hit, and they wanted her films before the Hayes Code. They wanted her films because her first play was literally called Sex, and everyone lost their mind. But it was a very popular play, and it was having Frank. The best part is, and I hadn't realized it until she said it, Mae West is never uncovered, and I don't think we've realized that.
She was a sex symbol, but
she was covered for almost his.
She was always, but she was sexy.
Yeah.
You were talking about the
yeah.
movie. We were talking about the last story about what you call it.
Promising Young Woman.
Promising. Yeah. I was thinking about the movie Mrs. Sloan, I think it is.
That sounds familiar.
It's with get my old brain to come up with the woman that did 30 or whatever.
Zero Dark 30.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yes. Jessica Chastain.
Yeah. She did that, and in there, she got revenge without murdering people.
Was she the one that was like was it the king?
No, she was also in that movie.
She was okay. I was just like,
yeah.
Should be working in New York.
Yes.
She was supposed to do this, and she just let it out. And then they just started hammering her career and stuff. And she, even though she was brought up for committees and had to testify and stuff like that, when she did it, she took them down. And it was like, oh yeah, oh yeah. That movie is like, wow, yeah, that was good. So
yeah,
that put it on your list.
And that's a different kind of catharsis, though, right?
Yeah.
So one of the things that comes up multiple times in the book is how we, as an audience, we have been conditioned to see not just these characters, but that it bleeds into real life. The shrew archetype.
How we
Maybe the shrew.
and how we treat the performers, how we align
Yes.
a performer's role
Oof.
or multiple roles. Speaking of Mae West, like Mae West, as pointed out in the book, wasn't just a person. She was also a character. And in the same way that Lady Gaga is a character, the same way that Madonna is a character, the same way Cardi B
Is a character, yeah.
and a person,
Yeah.
and also a role.
Right.
That was, and that like, it's almost, the thing that was interesting in the book was that it almost seemed like if they couldn't stop you here from making the art, then they'll stop you, the artist,
Yes.
from expressing yourself
Repeatedly.
and just that, but then also that the people who were able to, like Mae West, we're talking about someone this is like 100 years ago almost,
literally,
and the
not
role,
almost was
and-
100 years.
yeah, and the role that capitalism plays in all of that also, that like, and in kind of, it's so ingrained that on the negative side, it is, the question of whether or not a female character is likable or unlikable is also so heavily tied to, yeah, can we sell her? Can we sell her to a male audience who's going to be predisposed not to like this person anyway, or who isn't going to understand their motivations, and how do you do that, and how do you cater to an audience who shouldn't have to cater to, and don't want to, in order to like respect the art that you're making. But then on the flip side, there was a lot of examples in the 70s, that sort of second renaissance of 70s movies where we're just going to make movies about anything.
Yep.
And then, pre-code of where people would be morally outraged.
They would still go into the movie.
Well, and that's the thing, it's like people are still coming, so we're still going to make these movies. No matter how mad you get, we're still going to make these movies because people are still coming. And like the in-your-faceness of that, of like, at a certain point, the money talks, and unfortunately it drives things. But the money talks also, it's like, well, people like it, so I'm sorry that you find it morally objectionable, but people are still coming to see.
That's a good point. Go ahead.
I'm really not, this is what I find it. I'm not very well connected to this pop culture, so a lot of times there are references that go by and I'm going, huh? What? and but I'm aware of some of these things that sometimes, not specifically with women, but there are some characters out there that it's what I start calling, it's just another vigilante. Or somebody, it might be a rescue mission, but it's just the bodyguard. Or John Wick, it's just like, okay, after 4 movies, it's like, no, I'm tired.
Just don't let our mind hear you say that.
It's just, what it is. I'd rather watch drama. I think there's romance, I love all that stuff. But you still have some bad characters there too. So, about now, I'm getting even more intrigued about this.
It does a really good job speaking to the money thing, and that actually ties into one of the things that you're saying. She talks about the capitalism and how no matter what the movement is, Hollywood will find a way to make money off of it.
Yeah.
Whether it's pre-Hays Code and women actually like Hedy Lamarr before she changed her name, having an orgasm on screen, and people going, she did. That was not her. Hedy Lamarr is her stage name. That was not original name. And so how, people were outraged, but they made 3 more of those movies. Or how the first example I can think of was The Craft. She brings that movie up in the book, and she talks about how it was a marketing of both the Rise and the Wicked movement and the grunge movement, which were both anti-establishment, but they found a way to make some money off of it. And what was interesting is that movie is actually a really good movie. It's still universal. Yeah. It's still, because, and this is the thing she pointed out about the shrew character, or because technically the character of Nancy, played by Fariza Balk, is considered a weirdo and a shrew. And she's like, but if you pull back the layers of weird, quote unquote, weirdos and shrews, it's usually because they have big hearts that have been hurt multiple times. But most people, both in real life and in film, don't want to go past it. And so she talks about how every time, right up until Nancy asks for power, every time we see her, she's trying to help whether it's her mother or trying to get away from her handsy and abusive stepfather, or if it's warning the new girl about how this one guy is going to try to sexually assault you. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when it's going to happen. And so she spends that whole movie, but she's still punished.
I'm thinking that's such a great show.
I love that
I'm
film.
really like, wow, you're right.
And she's the only one. The other three girls ask for things that are very much from a young teenage woman's perspective. She asks for power because she has spent her entire life powerless. And she's punished. But if it were a male character, we would be cheering on his revenge. And when she said that, because that I couldn't figure out why.
She's basically Magneto.
Yeah, she is Magneto. And we literally have t-shirts that say Magneto was right, because he was. And don't at me on the internet, because Magneto was right, and so is like. Anyway.
Okay, Magneto and Cyclops,
Excellent.
but yeah, they're men. The characters being like them.
Yeah, but-
I'm lost.
yeah.
I'm
Well,
like, I know Magneto. But you know, not all cultures always act that way.
Right.
There was it was the League of Policemen. And
I wanna read that.
here, but one of the relatively recent, yes, she went all the way down to old history, but this woman in Argentina was a poison. I forget the reason she did her there. She put them in the categories of why they were poisoned. Okay? But this one became very famous, and then became kind of a cultural hero.
Icon.
Yeah, I was like the only one. All the others were like, you know, some of them were put to death or whatever, you know, or their miserable lives. But she became famous and almost an icon. Yeah.
So that is another thing that she speaks about how different cultures receive different characters. Because for me, Nancy, to that point, was always the character that I understood. I did not have her home life by any stretch of the imagination, and thank God for that. But we all, I think anyone who's been marginalized identifies with those characters in that movie specifically. Of all of those movies that came, The Craft.
The Craft, okay.
Of all the
I
movies
was
that
intrigued
came out.
because it's supposed to be witches.
Yes.
I'll read that.
It's a great movie. You'll like it a lot. Yes. Which is another one. I love that. I just watched, my mom just watched that again recently, and we were both just
I
cackling.
could watch that again.
I love that movie. And share with those ponytails, never step fails. But anyway, so we were talking about how one of the things that came up in the book, and it made me actually sit down with my mom about it, was how people are perceived culturally as well. So to the Magneto Cyclops was right conversation. So one of the things, you know, if you've read the X-Men comics, you know that Magneto was based on Malcolm X, and Professor Xavier was based on Martin Luther King.
Whoa.
Yeah. We don't want to go too far away.
But I never.
Yeah. And so,
Oh my God, yeah.
so Nancy is right, but she's just like Magneto. But like to what Pete said, we love Magneto. Even back when we were supposed to hate Magneto, we were like, and even as kids, at least I was like Magneto. Not at all. I was like, no, not even. No, we were like, no, because if you're going to keep trying to kill me and mine, at some point we're going to fight back.
Oh yeah.
And you have asked repeatedly. You kept calling to be so now I'm coming. And so, yep,
You ignored the whistle,
yep,
you
every time.
ignored, you ignored the steam,
Yeah.
and then it boiled over, and now you're mad.
Yeah, you're mad. And so Nancy's character is punished for being somebody who's like, at every turn we see in the film, every time you turn around, someone's in her face for no reason. She could be mind her business. We see that in the movie. She's walking down the hallway and somebody hurls a slur at her. And it's like, she was just minding her business. So then when things start popping off in that film, it's like, yeah, okay, yeah, I see you. I see you.
If I recall, she was definitely very marginalized because she was considered like
Trailer trash, right? Yep. She had the audacity to be poor.
Yeah,
How dare
that's
you?
true. That's
And
true.
still
Yeah,
think she had value.
absolutely. That's one thing that capitalists, they say, blame the people who are poor on them.
Them,
It's
yes.
their fault, not any,
Yep.
not any condition, not any, unfairness.
Yeah.
The books are shone a light on so many of those characters that, be watching a lot of movies in like the late 80s to the mid 2000s. It's like Regina George. Regina George, the ultimate mean girl, who reminds me of the girl bullies I had in school. I am very short film.
Still short. It's
Yeah.
okay.
I stayed in the locker. Not the writing. But I was like, dang it. Like, there's something so much more interesting to have a Regina George character look at it. Like, there's a reason for some of the things that happened. The Jawbreaker was a better example.
Yes.
That kind of went along with it. And Heather's, she's talking about Heather's. So
Oh my
much.
gosh, Heather.
You
Heather
think she was
so
alive when the
simple.
movie came out, but also I had never looked at Heather's that way,
Mhm.
in that way of like even the worst teenagers are teenagers.
They're still kids.
They're still like the worst of these kids are still kids who are still trying to figure it out, figuring it out in the worst way, and we don't allow characters to do that, and we miss
Opportunities
Yeah.
to have conversations.
With respect to female characters, because one of the things that really burns me is that women in general have been this way, and it's just like, I just, at some point, it's like, come on, gotta. I can remember when back in the 70s, I was thinking, it's like, oh, the war of the sexes. Well, there's a war of the sexes. I'm gonna be a casualty. I think I'll join the other side. I'm gonna find out what they're talking about. And the heck of it, but my brother was in college before one or two broke out, and both my sisters were brilliant. One got a degree in art, and mine was chemistry, and then one got a master's in computer science. My younger sister became a chemical engineer.
Nice.
We both ended up graduating together from the same school, same class. It was weird, but she was always been a force. So it was never. My father never.
He never tried to put them in a box.
No. He said, in fact, he encouraged you to study math and science and engineering because he knew they could get good jobs.
Yeah.
So there was never any of that part of it. He might have, put them in a separate mold, but still, I didn't realize how lucky I was.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the things that she touches on over. I don't know how long we have. Sure. Maybe that's it.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
We can expound.
Well, one of the things that she talks about in the book is how these stereotypes then bleed over into real life. So going back to Sapphire Stevens, that's what it was. Because this character was so popular, her name is Andrew, the stereotype bled into real life, right? And it's still something that we have to deal with to this day. If Kamala Harris loses her cool, she's an angry Black woman.
Yeah. Or an angry woman.
But specifically an angry Black woman. And so that, because of this one thing, that happened literally, again, 100 years ago. This one stereotype, because people forget that this medium has been around for a long time. Radio plays were first, but yeah, this medium has been around for much longer than we think. Because of that, it has gotten so ingrained in culture that every Black woman who loses her temper is now angry. I have been called, he has known me for a minute, and the amount of times that I have been told that I am terrified.
Oh, I didn't mean to.
I know you were teasing, but the amount of times I've been, and it's not because I'm teasing. It's not because yes, I'm capable. It's a running gag of my capability of handling myself with my hands if I need to. But it's mostly because I refuse to make myself small. And so that makes me scary, apparently. And so, thank my mother. And my man. So she unpacks how that has bled over. Like this, again, the spicy Latino one. Ooh, man, because when she started talking about Gloria from Modern Family, I was like, ooh, I'm gonna throw this one to you because I can't.
Well, no, I think like there was a certain point where watching that, where my wife was like, I think we're that.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, when that becomes, I feel like it's a convenience there. Like that angry Black woman stereotype was so convenient and fit so perfectly into a narrative that white America was looking for. That it wasn't just that it was true, that it wasn't.
It was never that true. It was just.
It wasn't. It was like this is. I don't know how to phrase it. It was like, oh, this has just fallen into our laps as a way to continue to marginalize, and it is a constant. Like when I'm all over the place. When the Obi-Wan show came out, the Star Wars Obi-Wan show.
Oh, the stuff that
every time, anything that Reba character did, the comment sections were just flooded. Like, what is she even angry about? What does she even have a right to be angry? And I was like, I don't know. Basic storytelling will tell you we're gonna find out.
Yeah.
Just like we're gonna find out all kinds of other things. And we did find, but it was every single week because it took numerous episodes before we found out what was driving her. And when and she was like the best kind in the way that you want a lightsaber wielding baddie to be, she was.
Yeah.
And yet it was like this, it's just this convenient thing that you can just reach behind you, boom, angry Black woman stamp, and it takes care of everything. It's that like I can hate this character in a way that makes me feel justified. Despite the fact that for some reason, every single Black woman in sci-fi makes me angry, and every single Black woman in fantasy makes me angry, but it's not because I'm sexist or racist. It's not because of me and my feeling. It's because they're all bad. They're just bad. All written bad.
Every single one of them since the beginning of time was all written for.
And we have done multiple podcasts.
Pop culture. I remember that.
And what I was looking at, man, she is bomb, and she's just destroying this person. And I'm thinking, she's good.
Yeah,
she's good. And I'm like, but I mean, the anger was all in her approach. It wasn't loud. It wasn't,
she was demanding answers that needed to be answered.
And
she was asking questions, and she had the audacity to say, "You will answer my question, whether you want to or not." And but to Pete's point, anytime a Black woman If it's a Black woman, she's an angry Black woman. If she's Latina, she's a Latina. And if she's Asian, she's a dragon lady. And so you get all of these nonsense things just because these women express anger. And if a Black woman is sad, we don't get to see that on screen. She talked about The Virgin Suicides, which is a movie that messed me all the way up when I saw it. I was not ready for that movie, and it was because of the all-encompassing sadness of the characters. But she's like, but we've never seen that for Black or brown. The closest we've ever gotten to was the Joy Luck Club. The Joy Luck Club is the closest we've ever gotten to, oh, no, it's phenomenal. Oh, wait, there is one other movie that I can think of. Oh my gosh. It's not Like Water for Chocolate. It's, oh my goodness, it's Gail Garcia Bernal. He wrote the book, and they made a movie out of it where every time the character cooked something, how she was feeling went into the food. Oh, and you know, and yeah. Oh, the actor, I can only think of the writer of the original book. Oh my goodness, I don't want to go on my phone while we're live streaming.
I saw that because it's like water for chocolate.
With Juliet Binoche. But I was
I'm thinking of one that was like in Western United States.
No. This one was specifically, if I'm not mistaken, set in Spain.
Okay.
And the one character, she was a bruja, which is another version of witch, and she didn't know it. And so every time she was upset or happy or whatever, when she cooked, it went into the food. And so people would eat the food and they would feel all of her emotions.
Oh, wow.
And so she didn't realize that she was doing that because she didn't know. She didn't know what she was doing. And it's an amazing movie. And now I'm so mad, and I'm going to put it in the comments when I figure out what the name of the movie is.
Jessica,
No! Stop.
I don't know.
Oh gosh, it was like 9. Yeah. Anyway, but suffice to say, that is the only movie I can think of where we were allowed to see Latino women of Hispanic descent, just express their emotion and not be sexy.
You touched on something that we've been talking about a while also, which is that television, and we've talked about this before when it comes to diversity, inclusion, representation, that television is where creators have gone to be like, you're not going to tell my stories. Guess what? Like,
I'm just gonna
we're going to tell our stories, and where we've seen so many more Indigenous stories, so many more Latino stories. It's been, I would go 5-6 years before there would be a movie where I'd be like, oh, there's my favorite. And like now there's so many, but that we get to spend time with these unlikable characters. In a movie, it's hard to
connect,
to pin all of the things down you need to like make a complete character. It's hard to plant all those stakes in enough time that she can reach the the lofty goal that we set for these characters of they have to be relatable and they have to be whereas in a TV show you get that nuance because you spend more time with them, and so even the worst of the worst get an opportunity to be seen, to be heard, to express their opinions, to grow, to revert, and we get to spend that kind of time with them and speak in their own voices and start to relate to them as human beings.
And we do male characters.
We do male characters by default.
That's what literally I was going to say, by default, because I was thinking, and she doesn't use this example in the book, but it made me think of it. The TV series Luther, with Idris Elba. And Indira Varma's character is his ex-wife. And when the show starts is the beginning of their separation. And then the young lady who plays Alice, well, I was confused with Rebecca Ferguson. That is not Rebecca Ferguson, but they look so much alike. But Alice is a serial killer, and she is very good at it. And there's no motivation for her. And because to your point, because of the episodic nature of the series, we are allowed to fully understand why Indira Varma's character leaves Luther, why in any other form, we would be told, oh, she's terrible, or she's a damsel in distress, or she's both, she's useless. No, she is completely logical because this man attracts crazy like nobody's business. And so, she does not want, as much as she loves him, and she does, to the point where her new husband knows that she still loves him. But he also knows that it's safer for her and him for them to be out of his orbit because her new husband is a former friend of his. And they got pulled into the orbit of the madness surrounding this character because he attracts these deranged people who see him as a challenge. They see his character as a challenge. And so if it was any other medium, she would be dead within the first season, or she would be the bitch or the shrew. But no, we are allowed to understand how much she still loves him, but that she also cannot be in this environment where her life is constantly in danger because of her association with him. And it doesn't, divorcing him doesn't help it, but she tries. She tries. And the same thing with the young lady who plays Alice. She is a serial killer. Did bad things happen to her? Yes. And as a kid, absolutely. But at the same time, it's not an excuse. And I love that about that specific series. Because if this was any other series, she would not be allowed to be the Moriarty. Does that make sense? Moriarty, we never get an explanation for Moriarty in any version of Sherlock. We never get an explanation for why Moriarty is the way he is. Not once, not in the books, not in the movies, not in the television series, never. He just is, he's just this unstoppable force of nature. And on Luther, Alice is allowed to be the same. Villanova on Killing Eve is allowed to be the same. So I love that, and she makes a point of saying that we've evolved enough, but it's only been in the last 10 years. But we have evolved enough to let villains just be villains. And let female villains, there doesn't have to be an inciting incident. She could just decide that she don't like your face today. And that could be all it needs. There's one example she gives, I wish I could remember the name of the movie, where a character just decides, I feel like killing people today. And she does. And there's no rhyme or reason for it. And it's horrifying, but that's okay. And we've gotten to that place in a good or bad way that it's like, yeah, these people are, they are who they are. And so that's okay. And that's all right. And the other thing is, I really like how the shrew archetype, I really want to touch on that because she pulled up 10 things that I hate about you. And going back to Taming of the Shrew, which is the inspiration for 10 Things I Hate About You. And how girls are not allowed to not care. And whether it's in film or movie or in day-to-day life, we are not allowed, women and girls and femmes are not allowed to not care about what you think. There's a point where she says, I had to actively train myself to not look around and see if other people were looking at me and making judgments. And it is a day-to-day, moment-to-moment struggle because we as women of color, are trained since birth to please and make ourselves presentable. Make sure that what you're saying and what you're wearing, you can be smart, but not too smart.
This is about to go out a lot. She was, there's, I think she might evaluate much more about some of the sports than they did.
Yeah.
She said, she said, I don't care about it.
I don't care.
Yeah.
I was on the wrestling team. I was the only girl on the wrestling team. And I was called every name under the sun because I was a girl on the wrestling team, so I couldn't have been there to wrestle. I
You
wanted
there
to
to
be
get a
the
guy.
get a boy. Mhm,
Oh, yeah.
mhm. So it wasn't that because my grandfather and I got up every Saturday morning and watched Glow and WWE, and I wanted to do what they did. That couldn't possibly like that couldn't possibly be the reason that I wanted to be on the wrestling team. It had to be because I was a slut. I was trying to get a boy or something like that. 14 years old. I don't care about boys.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. It's so ingrained for girls to care. And I remember my mom telling me, and it stuck with me my whole life. Two very specific things. One, no matter what the group is, somebody will find someone else to look down on. No matter what, you could be in a group of everybody who looks exactly like you, and somebody will find something to look down on you about. And two, you cannot pay attention to somebody's beats because you have to learn how to dance on them. I had to learn what my beats were and not worry about whatever the other people were dancing to. And she's pretty good. Well, she was she was one of the first when she was in the whack attachment. I don't know if you remember, you might remember this. When the whack attachment was the women's auxiliary corps. So she was in the military before women were fully integrated into the armed forces. And she was one of the first Black women to be in that. And so she had to march to her own drummer, or she would have been stuck in the middle of nowhere where they were still holding land rails. She had to make a choice, what was going to be better for her.
Yeah.
At a very young age. I'm not staying here because here ain't nothing here for me. She literally grew up where they were having clan rallies every week. And so she had to do something, and it wasn't staying there. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
Yes.
I read a book about, their training and coming into it, and boy, they were just treated horribly.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Now imagine being a Black woman.
Yeah, I don't even know that I was Black.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
So
since I retired, I didn't do the education.
well, and
All that stuff they want to ban.
that's the other thing. That's another thing she
Right.
talks about in the book is that we're not educated to be open to other people's experiences and other people's life stories and other people. We are the default in Western society is white, cisgendered men. We are told since infancy that is the default and that those are the only stories that matter. And so women like Mae West, like Lena Horne, like in more modern terms, like Cardi B, because she breaks down WAP and how WAP mess people's whole heads up. Like Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion, that like people, because they had the audacity not only to talk about sex, but talk about all the ways that they liked sex and that all the ways that they liked performing and doing and receiving sex. And people lost their minds.
What is WAP? I'm sorry, I am totally uneducated.
I don't know. I want to tell you.
Well, you can wish for it. Okay, I appreciate that. I'm sorry. I keep finding these bombshells. Lord.
But she talks about that too, about how sexuality has been going back to Hedy Lamarr, all the way back then, has been regular. Like literally the Hays Code came about because of Mae West and Hedy Lamarr. And how, because you couldn't have women on screen enjoying sex. You couldn't have women on screen obviously flirting. There's the whole, Mae West made Cary, yes, Mae West made Cary Grant a star
Yeah.
because she cast him in her first real role, her first movie, and she cast him, and it's that whole line, her famous line. When you have a lot of time and nothing to do with, come up and see sometime.
Yeah.
And so that was the line, and because of that, she obviously, and it's not just the line, it's the way she looks at him. When he walks in, she goes, okay, all right, and she,
Yeah, she says in the book,
Mhm.
breaks him in.
she, yes,
But I actually saw it more than once because like first time I was like, well, I like in the stone, and it was like, I felt like a voyeur. So I knew I
Which
missed
movie?
Poor Thing.
oh, poor things, okay,
And I went back to see it because I said, I knew I missed it. And,
Yeah.
you know, and it took me a while, and then I started to really just see it,
Yes.
see what it was doing. And I really didn't think of it as a comedy, but yet there's a lot of funny stuff in it.
Yeah.
They rank it as a, but I thought it was more an exploration. I thought it was more, I was just totally blown away by that.
Yeah.
But yeah, but again, she didn't know she wasn't supposed to enjoy things.
yes,
She discovered it, you know, she discovered
Yes.
her sexuality as a infant brain in a 25-year-old woman's body. Oh my God.
yeah, and that is the thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is the thing, is that we are told that women are not supposed to enjoy sex. That it's a burden. I mean, because of the Hays Code, women, Ricky and Lucy had a baby, but we never saw them in the same room together with their night clothes on.
TV,
But there was just suddenly a baby. No, they couldn't even right.
Right.
And if you enjoy, and that's in the hysteria, the crazy woman hysteria, right? So she touches on this, and then we're probably doing probably at some point. But how hysteria, which even the very word hysteria is gendered, because it's supposed to it's based off of the Greek word heuristos, which is supposed to be the womb. And so they believe back in the day that your womb, your vagina moved all through your body, and it caused crazy, and it caused hysteria. And so anytime if a woman didn't like sex, she was hysterical. If she liked sex too much, she was hysterical. If she was like, she was hysterical. And so, yeah, exactly. And that's pretty much it. That's pretty much the thesis statement of this book is women cannot win for losing, be it in real life or on film, because we are told, we are trained to not enjoy things. And if we do, then we are sluts, and or we're hysterical, or if you enjoy sex, heaven's to patrol. You can't have it. You can't have it.
The whole thing is I've been wanting to really get to know women as people. I mean, this is a journey I've been on, and but there always seems to be something that's some shadow of my upbringing that occasionally gets in the way, and I have to push it away and go, okay.
Yeah.
And I'm glad I had two sisters and a mother, and they can show anger.
Yeah. Well, and that's the point, I think, of the book, is that women should be allowed to be fully fledged people on screen.
But we're not trained for that. We have to learn.
We have to learn that. And so and it helps when our media, because media becomes shorthand. There's a reason why people know when I say bunny boiler, you know what I'm referencing. When
she knows, I don't.
Not basic instinct, fatal attraction.
Oh, yeah.
When I say basic instinct, you know what I'm talking about. When I say a shrew, you know what I'm talking about. You know I'm representing the truth, because media is shorthand for how we deal with life. I love horror, and because I find that horror is if you notice, when there's great civil discord, horror rises in written and fiction. Versions of horror rise, because it's our collective way of unpacking our trauma. So the best horror movies come about. Night of the Living, the original, about at the height of the civil rights movement. I bet, you know, it's how we unpack. And so these things become shorthand for how we deal with our life. So we need to be writing better shorthand.
Well,
We
should be a
need
lot
to
of
be-
horror coming out right now.
There's a ton. There has been a ton. Horror fans have been eaten. Okay. The last 5 years, it has been amazing.
Yeah, the last one.
Yes. So said all that to say, I would highly recommend this book. It is very thoughtful. It's very well researched. And it made me think, it made me reassess my own personal biases, because I don't care who you are, you do have biases. And it made me want to be better and seek out media that's better. What about you, Pete?
It was a slog, I won't lie. Like, it was so thorough.
She's super
And
thorough.
so, and I think, well, it would be unfair to call it that. The first few chapters I fought through because I couldn't figure out what I was being told to think. And it's because I wasn't.
That's
It's
literally what I was gonna say.
It's because it's such an analysis and such a thorough analysis of different genres, all the different tropes of unlikable female characters, the good and the bad, the good portrayals, the bad portrayals, the ones that have been edited, the ones that were allowed to be set free. And I think it took me a long time to sort of get that she had an admiration for any of them, whether they were well-intentioned, well-written, or whether they were, you know, like poorly thought through, but somehow something punches through the surface and becomes a touchstone for people who are looking for a character like that to identify with, to understand and to appreciate, even through all the badness and all the unlikability. And once I got to that point, I was like, this is going to be harder,
Yeah.
but it makes a lot more sense. And it just became, it's kind of an education. Like you said, I can't stop thinking about it, and I can't stop talking about it. And that, I think, is the mark of a good book.
Yes.
Where, like, I wasn't reading it for fun, but I also couldn't stop
Reading it.
And that was the other thing where I was like, if I wasn't reading it, it was playing in my car. And then I'd be like, oh, okay, I'm done with that for a minute. And then I'd like play it while I was listening. And I'm like, well, I'll play it while I'm working just to get through it. Because at every turn it challenges me, and I don't like being challenged. So I'm pushing back while it's happening.
Not true.
But I like growth, but I don't love it.
Okay. America. It's history of the state from the perspective of. And I did reach one spot where I go, okay, I gotta stop for a minute, because I'm like, whoa, that there was a concept
Yeah.
that I couldn't quite, and I gotta go, and I said, I think I might have to read it again. I mean, there have been a couple books that I've read that were even like sci-fi or fiction, and I started reading them, I go, wait a minute, well, I put it down for a while and then went back and read it and go, oh, okay, I got it.
Yeah. I think that's my favorite thing about this book is she's not telling you.
No,
She's just laying the information out there
expose,
and saying, you make your choices based off of the information I'm giving you. And if I help you to, not even help you, just here's the information. This is the pattern that I've noticed.
Well, I pick up a lot of books because something about the title. Like one I just read, it's a recent book. It was called, it's the Women Without Children, the long history of women who don't have children. And it's not a negative, it's a positive, but it's the woman is a historian. She's without children, and she found that her ideas through writing the book, she changed. Even some of her ideas.
That we don't even have time to unpack.
Yeah.
Because that is a whole thing right there.
One thing I would like to point out, the very back is Unlikable watch list.
Yes.
Which includes movies from almost every era.
Oh, wow.
Yes. Up until, and she has updated it most recently.
Yeah, the acknowledgements, the sources, like this, it's a well researched.
The book originally came out in 2023. in mid 2023, and she's updated it 7 times.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's
Oh,
digitally
so
updated
this
it
is, that's an active research
Yeah,
project.
yeah. because pop culture keeps changing. And sometimes for the good, sometimes for the So that has been Unlikable Female Characters by Anna Bogutskaya. You can find it here at Snug Books on Harvard Road in Baltimore, or wherever your books, local booksellers are.
Yeah.
You can find us at PC Uncovered on Twitter and Instagram, popcultureuncovered.com, and Pop Culture Uncovered on Facebook, Tumblr, YouTube. Where else?
GeoCities.
And for Allie, all the virtual reality websites. We love you guys. Please wash your hands, wear a mask around people you don't. And we would love to see you guys at Baltimore Comic Con. And okay,
Wow.
you guys were fantastic.
Yes,
It's the artist will probably see me.
yes, you will see me again.
Make sure I- But if I don't use somebody's name.